people who want to know what is the KeithAndrew Network, the whole point of my talk show is to show you that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, so prove to them to still amount to something. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and you're watching the KeithAndrew Network here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. With that being said, today's guest is an upcoming podcast host, actress, public speaker, and producer, and that is none other than independent upcoming actress Christina Peck. We're going to hear from her when we come back from this recommendation.
Hi, my name is Christina Peck. I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew this evening, and I had an absolute blast speaking with him, and I'm so happy to have met a new friend, and I think he's doing an amazing job. And keep up the good work, Keith.
As you heard from the recommendation, we have a beautiful guest on our show. She is a Jill of all trades. Absolutely amazing what you have accomplished. Yes, I am a bad flirt and I am an ass kisser. But you know what? It's always good to make an impression and be real. And that's what the KeithAndrew Network is. Hashtag break the labels. Hashtag be real. So this is not like a Scooby-Doo thing where we fool people. This is what we have. With that being said, our new hashtag for the KeithAndrew Network is talk show host with a learning disability. But it's not about me, it's about you. And the first thing I want to do is I'm so used to reading index cards. I'm like, you know what? I want to go back to my old ways where if it pops in my head, I will ask the question. So if I look down, I'm not avoiding eye contact. I'm looking at your profile. But the first question I want to ask you is, you are a podcast host yourself. So the first question I want to ask you is, who inspired you to become a podcast host?
Wow. Well, I fell into it with my husband. My husband is actually the one that started it years ago when our oldest, who is going to be 12 in October, when she was just a baby. So he got involved with a Facebook acquaintance who invited him to start doing podcasts. This is back when we were living in Michigan. We moved to Missouri about 7 years ago. But I did a few interviews with him. He started the podcast. My husband, his name is Josh. And that is really his forte, but I kind of fell into it with him. And we did some shows together, and we used to have a pool table down in our basement here that now is a recording studio because he's a filmmaker, and it helps with my auditions because I'm an actress. And well, he was offered a job at a ministry, and that's what caused us to make the move down to Missouri. And there I was just helping with the warehouse and filling book orders and things like that. And they wanted to do this show for science and creation, things like that. And they said, well, Christina, do you want to do it? And so I just kind of fell into it, doing it with him. And so it was a web series for a while, and I did that for 2 years. And then when we were at home, we set things up down here, and we still do from time to time. I haven't done it in a while, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but I just fell into it, and I started having a lot of fun with him. And I really enjoyed talking when we'd get articles, some on cryptozoology, some on science, some on biblical topics and theology. And that's what got me into it. And then I had to take a step back in 2018. And that was because our son, who had just turned 5 at the time, was diagnosed with leukemia. So everything that I was doing went on the back burner. My husband continued to work and provide for us. And I was able to take care of our son for the past 4 years. Now he's in remission and he's healthy for the most part, still has some ups and downs post-treatment, but we're working through that. And it wasn't until December of 2021 that my husband inspired me to get back into the things that I love doing.
No, absolutely. And I'm really happy that your son's doing well.
Yes, me too. It's a sweetheart.
And he's more than welcome to be on the show. They're all welcome to be on the show. Just throwing it out there.
Oh, definitely. And I definitely want to do that. Just this past week was kind of a crazy off week.
No, absolutely. And now, the other one I want to ask is, would you be interested in being part of the KeithAndrew Network? We can talk.
I would love to.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whatever you would have me do, I'd be happy to put whatever I can towards it. Absolutely.
It's funny you should use that a hashtag. Absolutely, because I actually, when I say something, I don't do it in my everyday life. But when I do my talk show, I end the conversation with absolutely. So it's really funny that it's starting to grow on people. So hashtag absolutely. But the next one I want to ask you is, what you mentioned science, you mentioned all these other great things, and right behind you, you have a great set. I think that's like a keyboard behind you. So,
Yeah.
so what can you tell us about? Well, we're having a brain fart. So, if you were, for an example, if I invited you to be on the KeithAndrewNetwork Network and create your own show, obviously you did shows in the past. So would you recreate past episodes, or would you want to create something new?
That's a great question, Keith. Oh my goodness, where did I start with that? Oh, yeah, I have written shows in the past with my husband, and I do enjoy new context, and I think that I would want to go with a new a kind of a new idea. I try to
Oh,
figure that out.
you're no, absolutely. And I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Oh,
But
that's fine.
you are more than welcome to talk to anyone that I make contact with. I'm not one of those people that, oh, don't talk to my contacts. Go make your own friends. If you find someone on my list that you want to talk to, you're more than welcome to. Be professional. That's all I ask. But you can talk to them all you want. I'm not one of those, anal people that are like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. But, it's as long as you're professional, you help me, I help you. The entertainment world, it's about who you know, and it's about connecting. It isn't what can
Absolutely,
you
you're
do.
correct.
It's not about what you can do for me, and it's only for me. Something I'm
Mhm.
still working on. But the other question I want to ask you is, you mentioned you were a writer. Who inspired you to become a writer? And have you ever written articles about people, for an example, with disabilities or interesting stories?
Certainly. So yes, from a young age, I wrote poetry. Um, I have written outlines for the shows and things like that. I have also contributed writings for the ministry I used to work with my husband before my son got sick. And so I've written chapters, and it was called Once We Were a Nation, and I did the chapter on faith in America. And I also helped my husband with his chapter that he contributed to that book. It was a big group project for everybody in the ministry, and so I've written things like that. As a teenager, I wrote some fiction kid books. No, I never published them or anything like that, just kind of for my own keepsake. It was funny. I was 15 or 16. I had a crazy dream one night, and then I'm like, oh, that'd be a good idea for a book. And so I just sat down and started writing an outline based off of a weird dream I had. And I was big into Lord of the Rings as a kid, and Chronicles of Narnia. So it was on the lines of that kind of fantasy tale. And I have written articles also when I was at Skywatch, the ministry that I was working at with my husband. I did do monthly articles. Usually it was fact based on things. I did an interview type article one time with our good friend Joe, who works over there. He's also the owner's son, and he's going to be taking over the company. But I did an interview type article with him where I sat down because he had an idea for a show for teenagers for the ministry to do. And so I sat down and I did that, and then I put it into almost like a journalist form. So that's the type of reading I've done, or writing I've done.
Well, if you're interested, I would love to talk to you about an article idea.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'd love to sit down with you.
No, absolutely. Now, one thing I do want to point out is I'm so used to having looking down and looking at the questions, but now I'm like, I want to go back to how I used to do it. Just because my dad says I have diarrhea of the mouth. So if it pops in my head, I just do it. But I got, when you're so used to doing something, you try something else and it just completely throws everything off. But let me ask you, you mentioned you did your own show. Mm-hmm. Did you ever write your own questions, or did you say, you know what, it's better just to improv?
I find it easier to improvise. I have tried writing the questions, but sometimes when it comes to writing outlines and things, when it comes to questions, it's difficult for me. I trip myself up a lot trying to find the exact, how do I want to word this? And I have spoken to some people who will send their own questions in, and so I can just go off of their questions. I find that easy to do, but also just the free improvisation of, hey, what are we going to talk about today? You have the floor. Go ahead and tell me, and we'll just have a discussion. I find it more real and more personable.
Now, do you ever question on X, because you did have your own show? Have you done it via Zoom, or did you actually sit down with the person? And what do you prefer? It's better.
I have done it both ways. We had a studio, the studio with the ministry that I worked for. We had a whole studio. We had our own graphics, our own backgrounds. The name of the show was Into the Multiverse, so we had our own generators that said ITM on it, and sometimes we would have people come in. Sometimes we would have people come in over Skype or Zoom, and we would interview that way. And then here at the house, when my husband and I would do interviews, we would normally do them over Skype or Zoom. And I really don't have a preference either way. I like Zoom better than Skype, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And but either in person or over the internet, it doesn't really matter much to me.
No, I agree. And one thing, actually, looking back at my old Skype episodes, actually, I'm not going to look directly at you. So, I mean, instead of looking at the camera, I felt like I'm at the freaking eye doctor. It's like, stare at the green dot, stare at the dot. And I'm like, I'm so used to staring directly at the guests. So, for listeners, that's how I do it. I stare directly at the guests. Anyway, I am my own worst critic. But what I was going to ask you is on Skype, and I found out recently, and my brother likes beating me over the head with this. Oh, you've been doing your show for 10 years. If it's not going to become something, it won't. But it takes a process. And if you watch from the very beginning of June 10th, 2013, to all the way now, it's officially 10 years of the KeithAndrewNetWork. First off, I got my head out of my ass. And secondly, I got out of my own way. It's like, wow. I taught myself everything. I taught myself how to do Zoom. I taught myself how to do Skype. And the same thing with your show. And let me ask you this. Did you have to take classes to learn how to do because I'm very curious now. And I'm looking behind you. Do you have your own lights? Did you have to go take classes? And for people with disabilities who want to take lessons from you, what were your steps? Did you take classes to learn and everything, or did you just jump head first?
We jumped head first. We just kind of decided to wing it. my husband learned a lot, and he looked things up on YouTube for
Yeah.
tutorials, and platforms like Skillshare and things like that. That's basically what he did, and I learned from him. I learned hands-on. At the studio, I learned how to focus the cameras and learn how to center people and do audio checks. I learned quite a bit with sound and stage over at the ministry. And so you just kind of learn as you go. No, and my husband never went to school for it either. He learned by doing. He was the one that started his podcast, and he learned from there, and he caught the attention of his now employers, and he's doing well. Now he went from just being an author to not just an author. I don't mean it that way, but to just doing writing, to then doing writing and hosting, and I co-hosted with him, to now he does writing and he does documentary films. And he is actually going to start doing a little bit of fiction film work for indie films and independent films and things like that. So he's going to get his hand in on that with a project that he and I are both going to be working on in the next couple months. Now, entertainment industry, things get pushed back all the time. So within the next couple months, we'll be working on this. We've just sent in rewrites for the script. He's helping direct the indie film that we're going to both be working on. I get to act in it. He gets to direct it.
Well, let me ask you this. So I want to have your opinion. So, and I have no idea how I even came across this guy, but this guy's like, he's a broker, and he's like, oh, well, you can sign this contract and you don't have to pay me, but my job would be, I look for, people like, for an example, WPDH, The Wolf, any radio stations to get you airtime. And it's like, oh, that's cool. You can have me. I don't have to pay anything. No, that's always something really good. But it's kind of like, where do I make money? Because it's obviously the broker makes money from sponsors, and the sponsors will pay for my airtime. But it's kind of like, where do I fit in? Do you think it's a scam, or do you think it sounds too good to be true? It's kind of like one of those things, like, oh, you don't have to do anything. Everything will wink, wink, be taken care of for you, and you're covered.
See, yeah, that's a different one. We've never done anything for radio time. Everything was through the studio we were doing. Now, for our home business, we did things through Spreaker and Blog Talk Radio, and of course YouTube and Rumble, and was there another one in there? There used to be another one in there. I can't remember the other platform, but we used to have another platform. That
you mean Vizio, right? Kind of like it, something like that.
Yeah. Vimeo, yeah, things like that. So we just used all those platforms, and now Blog Talk was a little pricey starting off. We don't do the Spreaker anymore, but we still do Rumble and YouTube and Blog Talk Radio, and we're switching everything from Wix to Uscreen for our home business ministry. My husband is the one that's mainly doing the talk shows on there right now, and whenever I can, yes, I'll jump back into it. But I've been opening up my horizons, broadening them with doing other things. He got me back in to follow my dream of acting and performing. I have over 20 years experience in the theater industry, and I started crossing over into film right before my son got sick. And so I was doing so well, and then of course my family comes first, and so I put it all on the back burner. Didn't know if I'd ever pick it up again. My husband reached out to a few people that we know, in one acquaintance and a couple good people I get to call friends now, who work in the entertainment industry. And I was able to sit down as a Christmas gift. He had me sit down with all three of them. He reached out to three of them, and they all responded, and I was able to sit down and talk to them about it all. And they really encouraged me. So I've been able to get back into my passion for acting. And it's been a wonderful experience, really has been.
Now, you mentioned you had 20 years of experience. During that time, have you worked with, besides me, obviously, thank you for that, have you worked with people with disabilities? And what kind of advice would you give people with disabilities?
Okay. Well, my husband has a rare bone disease and he was on disability for years, so I've worked with him. In the entertainment industry, besides the talk shows with my husband, I cannot remember if I have worked with anybody. If I had, then, I couldn't tell. But I also used to be a manager at McDonald's, and I have worked with several people of all walks of life. And I've never had an issue with anybody from any walk of life, any situation, any disability, anything. And now there have been times that I'm a mom of 5. I have patience, and there's nobody, it's never been an issue with me. I've always had patience. My sister is a good one to ask this question because she works with special needs children and she's a teacher. And so she's been able to work with people of all types of disabilities. And she's a genius. She really is. She helped me. I was in a terrible car accident when I was 14. Couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. I was supposed to be a paraplegic. And she created a curriculum. I had to repeat the 9th grade because of it. I had a closed head injury. She created a curriculum for me to catch back up. So I caught back up, got back into school, went through school, graduated 6 months early before my peers in my class. So my sister is a good one to ask this question because she could answer it better. But I'm just with anybody else out there who works in any area, who works with people with disabilities or whatever, just patience, work with them, and they're people. They'll, eventually you just talk to them and answer their questions and walk them step by step. That's what I do.
No, absolutely. In my case, it's kind of like a bowel movement. It's slowly building towards something.
Yeah.
I know that's a horrible metaphor, but I just wanted to make you laugh.
Funny. Yeah. Well, my son is ADHD, and he also has some other diagnosis of ODD, which is oppositional disruptive disorder, where he just has extreme mood swings.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was from the cancer, and then of course the cancer treatment. Because unfortunately it was everywhere in his body. Yes, it was leukemia, but it spread to the brain. It was everywhere. And so a lot of what my son is working through now is because, and we were warned about this, is it can cause other mental disruptions. And I'm just patient with him. And yes, he does things where it's like, oh my goodness, this child is off the wall. What am I doing wrong? And I'll call his counselors and everything, like, Mom, you're not doing anything wrong. Take a breather. Don't take it personally. It's going to be okay. You're doing the right thing. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Because yes, it can be overwhelming with a child with mood swings. But
well, I never had mood swings, but I was always bouncing off the wall full of energy. I'm youngest out of 4 brothers and 1 sister. Each of them wanted to break their foot off in my ass. So I wasn't I'm not saying I was the black sheep of the family. I'm just saying, looking back, I was an asshole because I'm the youngest. But when I'm not trying to make excuses, it's just, you're a kid. Of course, I'm not the same person who I was back then, even though some people would disagree. But it's kind of like, I sympathize with what you're going through, because it sounds like something that I went through. And you just need someone there, not to cuddle them, just to know that you will always be there and you know what I mean? It's like one of those people, it's like you'll always be there and you come talk to me anytime you want. I never had that, but it's always good to have someone to talk to. But
Absolutely.
I do relate. But I want to ask you something because you mentioned this in the beginning about the science and something my brother said a while ago, but I want to talk to you about. It's during this time of the pandemic, has this given you time to sit back and refocus your career? And having COVID actually has a long-term effects. I had COVID 2 times. First time was horrible. The second time I got off lucky, but sitting back, it's not like I'm not saying it's a blessing. Absolutely not. I'm not saying it's a blessing because over 1 million people died, but it gives you a time to reflect your life with everything that you accomplished during this horrible time of pandemics. How has it reshaped your career?
Well, couple answers for that. I before getting back into auditioning for entertainment, I working with my son, I actually went back to school and I finished. I was going to school for medicine. I was thinking about becoming a trauma nurse or a doctor, but I left all that behind because I wasn't supposed to have children, but then I actually had children. In my car accident, I was bruised. They said, no, you'll never carry. And if you ever do conceive, you're not going to carry to term. I've been pregnant 8 times. Unfortunately, I've lost 3, but I have 5 beautiful children that are alive and well. During the pandemic, I did my schooling online and I have my credentials as a CHHP, which is a certified holistic health practitioner. Now, holistic health, it's not pseudoscience or anything like that. It's just I work as a certified health and wellness coach where I help people who come in and say, I want to live a better lifestyle. I need help losing weight. I need you as my cheerleader to help me out, or I'm a bodybuilder, but I'm a vegan. What diet should I be on? So I help people like that. And that's my area of expertise. And so I was able to get my credentials. Really, I did it mainly for my son, so I could help him post-treatment and get him the good food that his body needs to help repair itself post-treatment. And I picked up a few clients along the way. Secondly, it has changed my other career as an actress drastically, where I don't have to jump in the car or jump on a plane and go audition somewhere. I've got a studio right here in my basement with my husband, who's a pro cameraman and a director. So that's another thing. I just self-tape auditions all the way through. And my husband and I both had COVID towards the end of 2020. My husband had it really bad because he has a history of asthma. I was pregnant with my almost 2-year-old. She'll be 2 tomorrow, actually. And this is right around Christmas 2020. I had a completely different experience, and my husband had it.
But wrapping up, this will be played on social medias. Make sure to like, share, comment, or see us to do a part 2. Make sure to help us reach our goal of 100 views. Especially comment. I'd love to hear your ideas for my next guest and ideas about what we should do with the network. Until we meet again, catch you later. Thank you. And it was an honor to have me as a guest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I had fun.
Hey kid,